There's an old gaming saying that claims playing something with other people automatically makes it more fun. But is it true? Well, yes. But things are actually a little bit more complicated than you might think. See, recently, I decided to give World of Warcraft a revisit so I could grab some footage, and despite the fact that I was having a fun time blasting dinosaurs with magic and running around on a cool jungle island, at no point did I really feel like I was actually getting anything out of the fact that I was playing a quote, massively multiplayer game. Sure, there's other people running around the same world as you and you can team up with other players to do stuff like dungeons, but the times you have to meaningfully interact with your fellow adventurers are pretty few and far between. All the story bits and the quests, the bit of the game I most enjoyed, were difficult or impossible to experience with other people. Most of the time you just get shunted into your own little instance area so no other players can get in the way. Even in the overworld, I found myself more willing to wave to my sworn enemies in the opposite faction than actually fight them, because trying to kill each other was more hassle than it was worth for either of us. As far as I was concerned, World of Warcraft may as well have been a single player game. And that's a bit of a shame, right? Multiplayer games have so much unique and cool stuff to offer us that it was a bit depressing to be playing a perfectly good one that just wasn't taking advantage of the format. That's when it hit me. Playing a game with other people doesn't make it more fun. What does is interacting with them. For example, in the indie crazy golf game Golf With Your Friends, the default mode pretty much just permits players to putt in perfect parallel. The game is fun enough like this, but if you turn on collision, letting balls bump into each other, suddenly you find that you've opened up a whole new layer of the game. Sabotaging other players, blocking them in with your ball, and having to work around the fact that you might inadvertently knock someone into the hole creates a bunch of new and interesting challenges that can't be solved by simply learning the course. You've got to contend with other humans trying to screw you over as well. Golf with collision enabled is a much more fun game, all thanks to the addition of some good old-fashioned player interaction. So let's start at the beginning. How do we get players to interact at all? Because despite how fun player interaction is, a lot of games slip into the trap of discouraging it by making working alone more powerful than competing or cooperating. In Civilization-style 4X games, a common strategy is to build a few very densely populated cities in a defensible area, and then spend the whole game researching how to get to space and win the side's victory without ever really going to war or expanding very far or doing much trading, because spending resources in ways that might actually affect other players are resources spent not winning the game. While defensive, reactive strategies are a good thing, by rewarding players for not engaging with the other people in the game, they miss out on all the cool stuff multiplayer games have to offer. The trick then is to actually encourage players to do these things while making engaging with the other players the only way to win. Take a look at Offworld Trading Company, a competitive economic strategy game. In Offworld Trading Company, everything is set up in such a way that ties everything you do to the other players. Resource deposits aren't evenly spaced, you've only got a limited number of tiles you can claim, and your base gradually demands more and more of the essentials, like food and water, as it levels up. This inherent imbalance creates natural monopolies on certain key resources like steel, which is used to make buildings, as well as a dependence on players who produce the essentials like oxygen for your colonists, because any resources you don't make yourself, you've got to buy off other players, and prices will fluctuate based on demand. This means that in order to make enough money to buy out your competition and win the game, you've got to pay constant attention to what your opponents are doing. Is there big demand for chemicals because the other players are doing research? Well, then you can make a boatload of cash by making them yourself and selling to meet the demand. Has one player completely committed into making food? Well, it would be a shame if you tanked the price so they were swallowed up by debt, wouldn't it? Are green and blue leading the pack? Why not cut them down to size by targeting green's supply lines with a pirate raid and then blaming it on their competition, starting a black market war? By dishing out lots of tools to mess with other players, and rewarding those that do, Offworld Trading Company creates an organic social ecosystem that's unique to each game, fueling the cutthroat capitalist aesthetic they're going for. Cooperative games can also encourage interaction in the same way. Look at Deep Rock Galactic, which is awesome at intuitively getting people to work as a team. The key to this is the way it cleverly splits up tools between the classes so that no one has a specific job, and instead you'll all have to combine forces in order to work efficiently. For example, the Scout is amazing at zipping around the caves with his cool grappling hook, but he's got pretty much no tools that can help the rest of the team catch up. That job falls to the Engineer, who can make platforms, the Gunner, who can do ziplines, and the Driller, who can make tunnels. Similarly, when it comes to bashing alien bugs, teamwork is essential to not getting eaten. The Engineer's turrets are great at holding an area, but he needs to be defended while they're getting set up. The Driller can deal with small swarms with his flamethrower and smash the armor on big guys with his drill, but his damage output is actually quite low, and so other classes need to take advantage of the openings he creates. Such as the Scout, who has massive damage potential, but only against enemy weak points, requiring the driller to open them up so that the scout can blast the aliens in the bum for massive damage. If there was a single class with all the building tools, or one class that was the best at fighting enemies, then Deep Rock would be a much less interesting game, as there'd be no need to coordinate between players. You just all do your jobs independently. But by finagling things so that the only way to optimize finding loot, getting around, or killing enemies is to work together to overcome the limitations of your toolset, Deep Rock Galactic creates a whole new tactical level, and a great sense of camaraderie out of synergizing your equipment between encounters and communicating effectively enough so that this doesn't happen. Ouch. But encouraging players to interact is only the beginning. Once you've got players engaging with each other, you need to test those skills in order for them to feel the sweet thrill of victory from cooperating or competing successfully. We Were Here, a co-op puzzle game, is an amazing example of this in action. Instead of giving each player specific shortcomings that encourage them to team up, it instead gives each player half the problem each, and tasks them with communicating with each other to make sense of incomplete data. The Explorer, that's this guy, gets all the context and mechanics of the puzzle, whereas the Librarian, the other one, has all the knowledge of how to actually solve it. You've probably seen this puzzle basically a million times. Walk across the room in the right way, or you die on spikes. Simple enough, right? But things are a little bit trickier and way more interesting when there's no way to work it out alone. Solving this puzzle involves communicating symbols to the player in the library, who finds a matching book and then reads out the instructions to you. It's a brilliant test of your communication skills because it requires you to work together to bridge the conceptual gap between each other's perspective. Early on, trying to describe this symbol that looks like a box with a hook in was a real challenge because neither of us could find the correct phrasing. But as me and my teammate got on the same wavelength, we ended up both immediately agreeing that this one looks like a robot in a canoe. By the end of the game, we were super in sync, and it felt awesome to have forged that connection. Factorio, a great industry building survival game, sees you gradually organise and optimise a factory to one day get into space, and adding multiple players to the mix creates a really fun dynamic that somehow works well in a game originally designed for playing alone. Multiple engineers at once means squabbling over precious resources, having to work around people who've designed the factory in ways you wouldn't, and frantically working together to avoid cascade power failures because somebody didn't supply the steam engines with water. Organising people is just another optimisational problem to solve, and so multiplayer fits really neatly into Factorio, with the addition of multiple players basically just adding more depth to the experience. In a multiplayer game, you don't just master the mechanics coded into the game, but also the people you're playing with. This is something that's relevant not just to cooperative games, but also to competitive ones like Duck Game. The game, which, besides being about ducks, is also really focused on mind games, bluffing, and all sorts of other high-level social interactions. Oh, by the way, we're using a few mods in this footage, so I will put a list of them in the description down there. Yeah, it's that thing no one ever reads. In Duck Game, movement is very fast, and almost any damage will kill a character instantly. Even for seasoned players, the game is just too quick and just too punitive for simply reacting to what you can see to be a viable strategy. And that's good, because Duck Game offers a bunch of ways to bluff, mess with, or disrupt other players in ways that aren't just shooting them. You can trap people in nets, pretend to throw the pin at grenades, set people on fire, smash a window and run away, or fake your own death, to name just a few. Because the game is so lethal, disrupting and psychologically manipulating other players in order to open up a chance at a lethal kill is a really important strategy, because it forces players to play in a more interesting way than just running at each other firing wildly. And it also creates these awesome moments of payoff when someone acts exactly as you predicted they would and you get to pull off an awesome maneuver or kill them with a trap. Of course, everyone else is trying to do this too, and that means that super tense standoffs and insanely awesome gambit strategies aren't just commonplace, but encouraged, meaning you get to see them a lot. By making dealing with other people the winning strat, we can encourage players to interact. And once they're interacting, we can create a bunch of unique challenges by having the main source of difficulty come not from the mechanics, but from the other players, and the best multiplayer games use this to create a single experience that everyone playing can share. Designing multiplayer games is fundamentally different to designing single player ones. The role of a developer in a solo game is that of host, inviting the player to experience everything a game has to offer and pushing them in the direction of the cool stuff. But in multiplayer titles, the developer takes a bit of a back seat, and instead, the game needs to serve as a catalyst and a backdrop for fun that players are going to have on their own. The Jackbox series of games illustrate this concept beautifully, by having player-generated fun be front and centre at all times. Whether it's the joke-slinging Quiplash, or the robot-rapping Mad vs City, or the fast-paced pitching game Patently Stupid, Not only does the win condition involve appealing to or manipulating other players, but simply being a part of the game is fun as well. This could take the form of creating elaborate in-jokes, such as responding to every single prompt with some variation on a slightly smaller version of that thing, or referencing obscure Birmingham-based bands from the 90s. Referencing the fact I have a silly YouTube channel is also a good option apparently. Getting to laugh along with the people you're playing with creates a collaborative experience that single-player games just can't offer. In Monster Prom, a multiplayer dating game where you have to try and smooch Scott the werewolf and other characters who are objectively inferior choices, there's actually relatively little player interaction. But the game does a great job of making the players feel like they're a group of high school friends, by getting them to argue over dumb topics, and by giving them opportunities to sabotage or help each other's romantic conquests. All this helps to flesh out their characters, create alliances and rivalries, and generally adds a lot of interesting depth and charm to what's otherwise a pretty dumb game. Even Duck Game, which I'm mentioning twice because I've played a lot of it and it's really good, caters to less skilled players by having effective play create a bunch of funny scenarios that are great to watch unfold thanks to its surprisingly detailed systemic mechanics. Trapping someone in a net from the net gun, or accidentally running into your own net, leaves a player to hop around pathetically as they try to escape, mashing buttons in order to break out before someone picks them up and lobs them off the edge. Rocks and boxes, and even the corpses of other ducks, will kill you if they land on someone's head, leading to some awesome moments when someone finally pulls off the legendary rock takedown against someone using an actual weapon. My personal favourite is setting someone on fire, because it's a really effective strategy, but you've got to immediately run away from the other player's now doomed flaming duck as they take a little while to die, and if they touch you, you get set on fire too, leading to these wacky chase scenes as your enemies try to take you down with them. I think the key here, regardless of if a game wants players to work together, against each other or both, is that it has to bring them together, not drive them apart. Just giving players chances to communicate, like emotes, taunts or a dedicated quack button, can add layers of social nuance that can turn what are ultimately pretty simplistic games into experiences with more playtime to offer than the longest RPGs or the biggest strategy games, because the potential depth of human communication and social interactions is almost limitless. Multiplayer games can be so much more than just single-player games you play next to someone else, but we need to approach them in such a way that promotes empathetic understanding of other people and a willingness to work with them to create an experience, cooperative or competitive, that's more than the sum of its parts. And if there's anything that gamers and people on the internet have historically been great at, it's making friends and understanding alternative points of view. Hang on a minute. Hello and thanks for watching. I've been struggling through several technical difficulties to get this one out, a CPU failure and now my monitor's on the way out, so hopefully it's all been worth it. Before I get to the regular thank yous, an extra special thanks to all the people who've helped me get footage for these games, because this video was a bit of a weird one. Turns out talking about multiplayer games is pretty hard, and that's why no one does it. But what kind of end of video wrap up would this be without me reading out the list of my top tier Patreon supporters, who are Alex Deloche, Asaran, Alno94, Baxter Heel, Brian Notariani, Calvin Han, Colin Haman, Daniel Metjes, Dirk Jan Karrenbeld, Feetsalot, Jesse Rhyme, Jonathan Christensen, Joshua Binswanger, Leech2, Lucas Slack, Lunar Eagle 1996, Mace Window 54, Patrick Romberg, Ray's Dad, Samuel Vanderplatz, Strateger in Ultima, Yaron Mirren, and Chow. Thanks to all of you for being cool cats and continuing to support the channel, and I guess thanks to you folks for watching and being cool dogs? I'll get back to you on that. Anyway, bye!